And scene. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is a wrap. Good job, people. Can't wait for the world to see our horror movie with its symbolic plot and ambiguous ending. The internet is gonna be debating this one for years. What's this? If your film is vague and dreary, prepare yourself for a theory? No. No, not him! No! It was meant to be artistic! Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that delves so deeply into crackpot fan theories, it's scary. And today, we're partnering up with Crypt TV to poke around their twisted universe. If you're unfamiliar with Crypt TV, it is pretty miraculous, actually, if we're being honest. In this YouTube age of churn it out as fast as you can while keeping it so brand safe it hurts, Crypt TV is like the complete opposite of all of those things, and proves that you can still succeed on this platform even when the algorithm is actively stacked against you. Each Crypt TV upload is a mini horror movie full of practical effects, horrific original monsters, and scares. Lots of scares. Gory, edge of your seat, scary. Like, you just don't see this sort of stuff anymore. On YouTube, most definitely, but heck, even in theaters, original monster designs, practical effects, it's crazy. Crypt TV is just a breath of fresh air, so if you like scares, then you're gonna love this channel and you're gonna love being subscribed to them. Go, do it right now, in fact. I'll be here talking about their universe. And get this, Crypt is still not done. Not only have they crafted hundreds of original creepy tales that you can just watch for free right now, but they've gone one step further. They've created an entire interconnected cinematic universe. Yeah, eat your heart out, Universal Studios. Where's your dark universe now? Between Crypt TV's various properties, such as The Birch, Mordeo, Camp Monster, and Sunny Family Cult, they've pretty much created the Avengers for scary monsters, which is why today we're focusing on the team's Iron Man, a faceless creature known as the Look-See. Not only is he one of the most recurring monsters in the Crypt TV cinematic universe, he's also one of the most intriguing. Since season 1, fans have been speculating wildly, who is the Look-See? What exactly is it up to, and why? And now that we're at the end of season 2, we're left with an even bigger question. Why are there suddenly 2 of them? Getting to the bottom of it all in one video would surely be a fool's errand, but fortunately for you at home, I am that fool. Trust me, if you don't stick around for this one, you're gonna regret it. And as we'll soon come to learn, regrets come with a price. Let's dive in. We start with the basics. There's very little that's explicitly told to us about who the Look-See is and how he operates in his videos. Most of the information comes in the form of a cryptic letter that he leaves for all of his victims. If you yourself cannot release, it will come to take a piece. And when he says he's gonna take a piece, he means literally. And that piece is very frequently not tiny. Throughout each season, we get to see the bloody consequences of this little mantra. If a person is unable to let go of something or someone in their life, a past marriage, a lost child, a failed business, what have you, the Look-See will come to literally make that cut for you. Season 1 explores the fallout of a mysterious poisoning which killed 13 students at a high school, while Season 2 is a prequel story, taking place back in the 1930s, following the families of 2 twin brothers, Robert and James Capshaw, who made the mistake of founding a bank right before the Great Depression. Whoopsie! As you can imagine, both scenarios offer plenty of opportunity for the Look-See to, help people in dealing with their grief and remorse. So the Look-See monster appears to have himself a basic set of killing rules that he follows. Not all that hard, right? But it's a bit more nuanced than it first appears. First, it's important to know that your goodness or badness of a person doesn't seem to matter to him. In season 2, we watch as the Look-See lets a sociopathic killer escape unharmed. Because this killer, named Raymond, who, wait a minute, I know that sociopathic killer. That's my buddy, James A. Janice from Dead Meat. Look at you, buddy. Chalk up a kill count of 1 for you. Luckily for James, though, he has no regrets about his horrific murder, and therefore has nothing to release and is thus let go by the monster. His thief buddies, however, who aren't so sure about the attack that's taking place, suffer the consequences. We also know that the Look-See doesn't just work alone. Select humans are forced to become his mindless helpers. For instance, season 1's Jenny survives the Look-See's first attack, and when she still refuses to release the regrets over her bad marriage, the Look-See returns. This time, though, she not only releases, she fights back, and the Look-See makes her his new helper. I mean, someone has to write all those creepy notes. Can't be expected to do it on its own. What if he breaks a nail? These human helpers, though, aren't immune to the Look-See's attacks. If they get in the way of his plans, well, they're suddenly on the chopping block. In season 1, the Look-See attacks his own human helper when he interferes with his plan for killing the cop. Finally, there's the case of the pocket watch. The Look-See, outside of being a snappy dresser wearing hobo gloves, also has himself the classy monsters accessory of a pocket watch. This watch appears to be able to manipulate time and seems to be tied to his helpers. The watch pauses when his season 1 helper decides to pursue other career options, and then it resumes once Jenny is hired in his place in the hospital. But the biggest pocket watch surprise comes at the end of season 2 when a new Look-See manages to emerge from it. Obviously, this prompts so many questions. Why is a second Look-See being birthed before our very eyes? Where did it come from? Why is it coming out of a watch? And what's with that cute little bow on its head in the shadow? Those answers, sadly, just don't exist. Or at least they don't exist in the Look-See series. Remember, Crypt TV is a connected universe, and by broadening out our search and taking our own little look-see at other in-universe Crypt TV properties, we can piece together more about what's really going on here. We begin by looking at season 3 of the Sunny Family Cult, which tells the story of a teenager named Taylor trying to live a normal life despite her not-so-normal family of serial-killing cultists. Talk about awkward! Season 3 focuses on the character Roger as he tries to get Taylor to carry out a demonic ritual from an ancient evil tome. Though, that seems kinda redundant, doesn't it? Is there ever such a thing as a tome in movies that isn't both ancient and evil? Where did all the good, wholesome new tomes go? Anyway, this isn't just any old evil book. It's the one upon which the entire Crypt universe is built, considering it's connected to most of the other Crypt TV properties. Like in Mordeo, when these scouts try to get their demonic rune decoding badge. So much easier than that knot tying badge. Anyway, when Roger opens up the tome in Sunny Family, we see the Look-See creature has his own 2-page spread, along with other Crypt TV monsters like Apony and the Birch. There's even a page that describes the ritual for creating these sorts of monsters, calling for a blood sacrifice of 4 victims, then the 5th will, quote, become something. Thanks for the specificity there, book. If I'm going to the trouble of finding 4 human sacrifices, the least you could do is offer me some assurances that the 5th one's gonna turn into something cool and not, you know, a sack of lentils. That's honestly the lamest thing I could think of while I'm sitting here recording. Anyway, the picture strongly suggests that the somethings we're talking about means one of the monsters from the Crypt TV universe. Now, this is a huge point because it sheds light upon a couple central tenets of the Crypt TV universe. Tenet number 1, there are monsters throughout the universe, and humans can turn into monsters. Tenet number 2, just because there's one particular monster running around doesn't mean there can't be more of that exact same type of monster someday. For example, say there's one Look-See running around the city of Harbor. At any moment, a ritual could be performed and a second Look-See could join the fray. The tome also explains that in order for the ritual to work, the 5th sacrifice must be performed by a girl of 17 with dark hair, dark eyes, and violence etched into her soul. This is precisely why Roger sought out Taylor in Sunny Family Season 3. And just like Roger planned it, the ceremonial steps are completed at season's end when Taylor takes the 5th and final victim, but twist, that victim is Roger himself. And just like the tome said in the final frames of season 3, we see his body come back to life, supposedly beginning the transformation into something. What exactly that something is left unclear. The point is that Sunny Family offers a detailed explanation of how monsters like the Look-See come into existence. 5 deaths, with the 5th one being performed by a young woman. And at the end of Look-See Season 2, we see the birth of a second Look-See monster. So naturally, that begs the question, was that blue-gloved, bow-headed creature born out of the exact same ritual we just talked about in Sunny Family Cult? All signs point to yes. Look-See's Season 2 body count at the Capshaw homestead is, you guessed it, 5. The father James, the 2 thieves William and Thomas, his wife Mary, and finally their son David. And does Season 2 have a young woman with violence etched into her soul that could have committed the 5th and final blood sacrifice? Well, that's a big ol' yup too. It's Leah Capshaw herself, the Look-See's human helper who seems relatively unconcerned about the plight of her family. True, Leah appears to be younger than 17, and her hair and eyes aren't particularly dark, but demonic rituals work in strange ways. Maybe the tome's right writers were just getting a little bit too specific. Sometimes you're looking for someone with 5 years experience on the job when all you really need is someone with a can-do attitude. In this case, maybe it's less, we need a dark-featured teenage girl, and more, we'll take any young violent girl. All applications welcome. Plus, the streak she makes across David's face in her little family murder drawing is red, different color than the streaks that she puts across the eyes of her other family members. Something tells me that that drawing isn't gonna wind up on any refrigerators. But could this mean that his death is somehow different or special? It's very reminiscent of the 5th sacrifice from the tome, which has red ink displayed on the 5th victim's chest. If Leah was indeed the one who killed her brother David, it would explain one key logical inconsistency with the end of season 2 of Look-See. Why David got himself killed despite the fact that he does in fact release prior to the Look-See's attack. You see, David's grief is around the loss of his younger brother Theodore, Teddy Capshaw, represented by the teddy bear that he carries around. However, we see him actively rip apart the bear prior to his death, and yet he still somehow dies anyway. Sure, it seems like the doings of the Look-See, but remember, David's death occurs off camera, so the identity of his killer is completely unknown. We've only ever seen the Look-See kill people for 2 reasons. Either A, they failed to release, or B, they obstructed his efforts to kill people who failed to release. David did neither of these things, so it doesn't make a lot of sense for the Look-See to kill him. But if Leah killed him, David's death wouldn't be a violation of Look-See's own killing rules, and would also explain why we see a second Look-See appear at the end of the season. But where things really start to get suspicious is when you start looking a bit closer at the details. For instance, 5 death sequences happen over and over again in the Look-See series. Season 2 starts with 4 deaths and then the death of Theodore, a young boy with dark eyes, dark hair, and a shockingly similar fashion sense to the Look-See. Same shirt, same blazer, same lack of tie and open collar. That makes for 10 deaths total in season 2, 2 sets of 5, and at the end of the season, we've got ourselves 2 separate Look-Sees. Coincidence? Maybe, but now consider this. The Look-See creation ritual may have taken place in season 1 as well. Discounting the 13 poisoning deaths that start off the season, the body count in season 1 again appears to be 5. Jenny, who was arguably sacrificed and then brought back to life when the watch stops, Raymond, the Look-See's first helper, Marlene the mistress, Daniel the cheating husband, and finally the grieving father Jonathan. And again, wouldn't you know it, but the 5th victim's death occurs off screen and with a dark-haired, dark-eyed young girl left in the vicinity. In this case, the ghost of Camille, the daughter that Jonathan is mourning. A character who's only on screen for a matter of seconds, and yet is somehow important enough to be featured on the Look-See poster. Strange. And one other thing I'd like to point out about Camille, remember that bow on Look-See 2.0's head? Might that be related to the bow that we see on Camille's head? Which is also perhaps the ribbon that Jonathan picks up off the floor in the closet, which is also the bow the Look-See takes after killing Jonathan? True, the events of season 1 do indeed occur after the events of season 2, but remember, the Look-See has himself a very powerful timepiece. A timepiece that very notably ticks backwards. But okay, enough random observations here. It's time to start narrowing this down into some theories. First up, Theodore Capshaw, aka Teddy. There are several reasons to believe that this is the kid who would one day turn into the red-gloved Look-See 1.0. For one thing, Theodore's death is quite possibly the 5th death in chronologically the first 5-death sequence that we see in the series. Secondly, the jacket and shirt that we see him wearing are identical to the Look-See 1.0's outfit, right down to that unbuttoned collar. Thirdly, well, he himself may not have been killed by a girl with dark hair and dark eyes. We don't really know for sure. He himself has dark hair and dark eyes, which may be the starting point for that whole element of the ritual in the first place. Fourth, there's a clear theme to all of Look-See's season 2 killings. Greed. The father is a greedy banker, the thieves want to steal from him, the wife values her pearls. Now, we know Look-Sees are motivated by giving people a chance to release their regrets, their pettiness, the guilt that they have on their lives. Potential victims that ultimately embrace what's really important, like family or loved ones, ultimately survive the Look-See's attack. Therefore, it would make sense that Teddy Capshaw, a kid whose mother and father literally loved their possessions more than him, would come back with this sort of killing ethos. He was ignored to the point of death. He won't allow that to happen to anyone else. And finally, a 5th point in Teddy's favor, both his brother David and his mother Mary have memories of Teddy standing in a field or in a farmhouse, not in New York City where they're returning from. This suggests that the Capshaws were returning to their former home in Harbor, not moving there at random in the wake of the Great Depression. This would explain why the Look-See haunts Harbor. It's the location where Teddy died. Next, let's consider Camille from Season 1. There are a handful of reasons to believe that Camille became the new blue-gloved Looksee 2.0. First, just as Theodore was the object of David's grief in Season 2, Camille is the object of her father Jonathan's grief in Season 1, with both winding up as the 5th deaths in their respective 5-death sequences. Secondly, Looksee 2.0 appears to have a bow on its head, just as Camille had a bow on hers. Third, the blue Looksee emerges from a pocket watch that's ticking backwards. This could mean that the blue Looksee is from the future, meaning the blue Looksee could very well be Camille, who of course drowned decades after the events of Season 2. And lastly, there's that poster connection. Camille is a super minor character of the first season, and yet there she is, featured prominently in the marketing for the series. It's almost as if they're teasing that she's gonna have a bigger role to play in all of this. Or it's just an elaborate ruse. Captain Phasma is featured on a couple of Star Wars posters, and we see how important she was. Regardless, one thing that we can be sure of is that there are now at least 2 Looksees running around the Crypt TV universe. Will there be more in the future? Who knows? But one thing is definitely clear. Human helper Jenny has given herself writer's cramp with all the letters she's preparing, meaning that there's a lot more to come. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And